Did you know that Florida has more species of freshwater fish than any other state east of the Mississippi River? Or that the Everglades is not actually a swamp in the traditional sense, but a slow-moving river, 60 miles wide and just inches deep, that has been flowing across South Florida for thousands of years? How about the fact that Florida has more lightning strikes per square mile than anywhere else in the United States, earning the area around Tampa Bay the unofficial title of the lightning capital of the country? Or that Florida's coastline, when you account for all its bays, inlets, and barrier islands, is longer than the entire coastline of California? Or that Florida contains the only subtropical wilderness in the continental United States, a biome so unusual that species found nowhere else on Earth evolved specifically within it. Florida is a state that people think they understand. It shows up in the news constantly. It generates headlines. It is treated as a punchline by some and a promised land by others. But somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there is a genuinely fascinating story about a state that has been predicted to decline or collapse for years and keeps refusing to do it. Today we are talking about what is actually happening in Florida, why it keeps growing despite serious and legitimate challenges, and what that tells us about one of the most consequential and complicated states in America. Let us start by laying out the case that skeptics have made about Florida, because it is not a frivolous case. There are real and serious arguments that Florida faces existential challenges, and they deserve honest treatment before we talk about why the state keeps defying the predictions built around them. The most frequently cited challenge is sea level rise. Florida is extraordinarily flat, the flattest state in the contiguous United States by average elevation. The average elevation across the entire state is under 100 feet above sea level. Miami, one of the most economically significant cities in the country, sits at an average of roughly 6 feet. Parts of the Florida Keys barely clear the waterline on a calm day. As sea levels continue to rise, and as the intensity of coastal storms increases, the concern is that real estate currently considered valuable will progressively become uninsurable, then uninhabitable, and eventually inundated. It is a concern grounded in observable, measurable physical processes that are not in serious scientific dispute. The insurance market in Florida has been reflecting these risks in the most financially concrete way possible. Over the last several years, major property insurance companies have been exiting the Florida market at an accelerating rate. The cost of insuring a home in many parts of Florida has increased dramatically. In some coastal areas, private insurance has become effectively unavailable at any price that a typical homeowner could afford, pushing property owners into the state's insurer of last resort in numbers that have raised serious concerns about that system's long-term financial stability. When major insurance companies, organizations whose entire business model depends on accurately pricing risk, decide that Florida is too risky to cover profitably, that is a signal worth paying attention to. The heat has been intensifying as well. Florida has always been hot, but recent summers have produced conditions at the extreme end of what has historically been recorded. The summer of 2023 saw ocean temperatures around Florida reach levels that were unprecedented in the modern record, with water temperatures in some shallow coastal areas exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Coral bleaching events tied to these temperature extremes have been devastating reef ecosystems along the Florida Keys that took centuries to develop. For a state whose identity and economy are deeply tied to the ocean and the coast, the prospect of seas that are too warm to support the ecosystems that make the coastline valuable is a genuine, long-term concern. And yet, despite all of this, Florida keeps growing. The population story in Florida is remarkable, and it runs directly counter to the narrative of inevitable decline. Florida has been one of the fastest-growing states in the country for most of the last decade. It surpassed New York to become the third most populous state in the United States, a milestone that would have seemed improbable to anyone looking at population maps from 50 years ago. The waves of people arriving in Florida during and after the pandemic years were among the largest recorded migration flows into any state in the country. They came from the Northeast, they came from the Midwest, they came from the West Coast, they came from abroad. And they came in such sustained numbers that the state's growth has fundamentally changed its demographics, its real estate market, and its economic profile. The profile of who has been moving to Florida is telling. Retirees seeking warm weather and a lower cost of living have always been part of Florida's growth story, and they continue to come. But the more recent migration wave has included a significant number of working-age professionals and families, people in their 30s and 40s making active career and lifestyle choices, rather than retirement decisions. Young families from expensive northeastern cities discovered that they could afford a substantially larger home in Florida's suburbs than anything available to them back home, with better weather and, in many cases, comparable access to urban amenities. The business migration has been equally significant. Florida has become a primary destination for companies and business owners relocating from higher-cost, higher-tax environments. Financial services firms, technology companies, real estate businesses, and entrepreneurs across a wide range of industries have established or relocated operations to Florida in meaningful numbers. Miami in particular made a concerted effort to position itself as a business destination during the pandemic years. And while the results have been uneven, the fundamental shift in how seriously Miami is considered as a business hub represents a genuine change from a decade ago. The tax environment is a straightforward and honest part of this story. Florida has no personal income tax. For individuals and families where state income tax represents a meaningful annual expense, the financial difference of living in Florida versus a high income tax state is real and immediate. When remote work made geography more flexible, the financial calculus of that difference became much easier to act on. Miami deserves its own focused section because what has been happening there is genuinely new and worth understanding on its own terms. Miami has always been a city unlike any other in the United States. Its position at the intersection of North America and Latin America, its multilingual and multicultural character, its particular aesthetic of color and light and intensity. These qualities gave it an identity that was compelling and genuine. But for much of its history, Miami was not taken seriously as a global business or financial center. It was a tourism destination. It was a gateway city for international travel. It was a real estate market. It had cultural vitality and significant economic activity in certain sectors, but it was not in the conversation when people discussed where the most consequential business decisions in the country were being made. That began changing during the pandemic years. A combination of factors converged at the same moment. The flexibility of remote work freed business leaders and entrepreneurs from geographic constraints. Florida's cost and tax advantages became more significant when high-earning individuals had the freedom to actually act on them. And Miami made an unusually active and successful effort to court businesses, investors, and talent from other cities. The city's mayor became something of an ambassador for Miami's potential as a business destination, engaging directly on social media with business leaders and investors who expressed interest in relocating, offering practical assistance, and making the case for the city personally and persistently. The result was a genuine influx of business activity. Venture capital firms opened Miami offices, investment funds relocated, technology companies established presences. The Brickell neighborhood, already established as Miami's financial district, intensified in density and activity. Wynwood and the Design District continued developing as centers of creative industry. The restaurant and hospitality scene, already one of the city's great strengths, expanded and elevated further to serve a wealthier and more demanding resident base. The transformation has not been without complications. Housing costs in Miami have risen to levels that rival some of the most expensive cities in the country, creating serious affordability challenges for the working class and middle class residents who make the city function. Service industry workers, teachers, healthcare workers, and others in essential roles have found themselves priced out of the city they serve, forced into long commutes from more affordable areas or out of the region entirely. The infrastructure of a city built for a certain population has strained under rapid growth. Traffic, parking, and public transit limitations have become more acute. The gap between the experience of the very wealthy newcomers and the long-time residents of less affluent neighborhoods has widened in ways that are visible and contentious. But the fundamental shift in Miami's economic status, from a regional city to a genuinely international one, from a place known for tourism to a place known for business, is real and durable. It did not begin with the pandemic, and it will not end as the initial excitement cools. The natural environment of Florida is one of its most powerful and most threatened assets, and any honest accounting of the state's situation has to grapple with it seriously. The Everglades is one of the most extraordinary ecosystems in the world. It is not merely a Florida treasure or an American one. It is a globally significant wetland that supports biological communities found nowhere else on Earth. The Florida panther, the American crocodile, the snail kite, and dozens of other species depend on the Everglades system for their survival. The network of sawgrass marshes, mangrove forests, cypress swamps, and subtropical hardwood hammocks that make up the greater Everglades ecosystem once covered most of South Florida. Water flowed slowly south from Lake Okeechobee across a broad, shallow sheet before reaching the Florida Bay, maintaining salinity levels, nutrient cycling, and habitat conditions that supported one of the most productive coastal fisheries in the Western Hemisphere. The engineering of the 20th century fundamentally altered this system. Canals, levees, water control structures, and agricultural diversions redirected the natural flow of water across South Florida, reducing the Everglades to roughly half its original extent and disrupting the timing and distribution of water flows that the ecosystem depended on. The consequences included dramatic declines in wading bird populations, degradation of Florida Bay, loss of freshwater habitat, and the long-term drying of landscapes that had evolved over millennia to be wet. The Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, one of the largest environmental restoration projects ever undertaken anywhere in the world, has been working to undo some of this damage by restoring more natural water flows across the landscape. Progress has been slower than advocates would like, and the project's full implementation remains decades away, but the restoration effort is genuine and meaningful. Some wading bird populations have shown signs of recovery in areas where hydrology has improved. The political and scientific commitment to the effort has been sustained across multiple administrations and through considerable fiscal challenges. The coral reefs of the Florida Keys are in a more precarious position. The Florida Reef Tract, the only living coral barrier reef in the continental United States, has experienced severe bleaching events tied to warming ocean temperatures. The long-term survival of the reef in anything like its current form depends on the trajectory of ocean warming, which is being driven by factors that extend far beyond Florida's borders. Local efforts to improve water quality, establish coral nurseries, and replant heat-resistant coral strains are underway and represent genuine scientific innovation, but they face the fundamental challenge of working against a global force with local tools. The tension at the heart of Florida's story right now is between the forces driving its growth and the forces that threaten the foundation of what makes that growth attractive. Florida's growth is real, and it is being driven by genuine advantages: weather, affordability relative to the places people are leaving, natural beauty, coastline, the energy of its cities, and the diverse international character that makes places like Miami genuinely different from anywhere else in the country. These are not manufactured selling points. They are real qualities that real people are responding to with real decisions about where to live and where to invest. At the same time, the physical risks facing the state are real, and they are not going away. The insurance market reflects them. The frequency of major storm events reflects them. The temperature records being set in Florida's surrounding waters reflect them. Every year that passes, more people and more economic value are concentrated in a geography that faces increasing environmental pressure. The disconnect between the rate at which Florida is growing and the rate at which its physical challenges are intensifying is one that will eventually have to be confronted, even if the timing remains uncertain. Some of what will determine Florida's future is within the state's control. Land use decisions, coastal development regulations, investment in infrastructure resilience, the management of water resources across a growing population. Some of it is not within the state's control: the trajectory of global temperatures, the behavior of Atlantic storm systems, the pace of sea level rise. What happens at the intersection of those controllable and uncontrollable forces over the next 50 years is genuinely one of the most consequential questions in American geography. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for new videos every week. We cover geography, culture, and the real stories behind American places. If you are the kind of person who wants to understand not just where places are, but why they are the way they are, this is the channel for you.